I cannot believe we are finally here. Not only is a Fantastic Four movie coming out, and there's a trailer you can watch right now, we are getting rumors of who is potentially going to be cast in the Marvel Cinematic Universe X-Men movies. And while this definitely would suggest like a direction that this movie is going in, I wouldn't say any of this feels incredibly committal. These are characters that I would expect to see in pretty much any version of the X-Men. I have heard when people talked about this movie that people that are scoopers and rumor people have said they seem to want to go on the younger side, and this would gel with that, especially, we'll talk about it. I only have 3 characters we're talking about today, and if you are anywhere near familiar with the X-Men, you don't need an introduction to them, but I will talk about them a little bit and why I think some of these guys work and don't work. I imagine as time moves forward, we're getting a lot of these, especially because maybe they'll want to have some of them like show up in Secret Wars. I'm not saying like I've heard that, but I could just see that being something that it may want to set up, or at least maybe in the end of Secret Wars, you may want to get a look at like the world that is saved that now has mutants in it or something. So I have a feeling we'll have to get some of these actors cast by then. All right, so the X-Men, their fearless leader, although not always, but usually most of the time, is Scott Summers, aka Cyclops. I think it is a no-brainer that he makes it into the first MCU X-Men movie, especially whatever the first one is that contains like a group of X-Men. Because I think there are other spin-off groups you could do. Excalibur, X-Factor, Generation X, New Mutants, right? Probably not New Mutants because of the other movie. But what I'm saying is there's a world where like a very creative and fun X-Men Marvel Cinematic Universe like line of movies opens with like a Hellfire Club movie or an Exiles movie. But assuming it is just the default X-Men movie, Scott Summers is almost certainly on that team. Now, I've heard a lot of actors thrown around for Scott Summers. Like one that is not who we're talking about now, because who we're going to talk about are the front runners. But like one actor whose name I heard come up the other day was Brendan Thwaites, who is Nightwing in the Titans show. I think he would be a fine Cyclops. I think Cyclops as a character needs to be a couple of things. He needs to be like somewhat steady. He needs to be a leader. You can compare him to like a Captain America, except I want him to be more revolutionary. I want a Scott Summers who's going to take care of these mutants, but in a world that is hostile. I want a Scott Summers who's ready to do something somewhat radical. That's one of the things that I love about like a kind of recent Scott Summers, where he's not just a stick in the mud. He's a team leader who is ready to make change at the global level for mutants. Like he's taken up that responsibility. And I don't think we need to start here, but I want that to be somewhere we can go. Scott's traditionally kind of tall, white, eye color doesn't really matter because he has ruby quartz glasses on all the time. You know, traditionally handsome, but that's really it, right? I think you can go in a couple different directions in terms of the body type. Wolverine has called him slim in the past, but I don't think that means he necessarily needs to be like a string bean. Just needs to be like Wolverine is like stocky and he is more like a traditional, you know, superhero shape. So the actor who's been rumored to be the frontrunner for Cyclops is Harris Dickinson. Now you guys probably know Harris from a couple of things. First of all, he's in that new movie Baby Girl where he like hooks up with Nicole Kidman, and it's a sexy office romance domination thing or something. I haven't seen it, but people seem to like it. I don't know. That's where he is right now in the zeitgeist. I would say most people know him from Triangle of Sadness, where he played like a model who was brought onto this cruise ship. And if you haven't seen Triangle of Sadness, it is a wild movie, but he's in that. And that movie had some Oscar love. He didn't get a nomination, but like it got attention. He was also the lead in the Kingsman movie, a movie that is fine, has a fun fight scene with Rasputin, and an insane post-credit scene that sets up a certain historical genocidal monster as the Thanos of this universe. He was also recently in that movie Iron Claw, where he played one of the brothers. Like, he has a very impressive career for someone that's so young. He's 27, he's British, he's also in Murder at the End of the World. Like, I like the choices he makes. I think he would be a great get for Cyclops. Again, this is an actor who has not been nominated for an Oscar, but has been connected to a lot of movies. Like, I think he is one of those actors that people see and go, good. That's going to be interesting. He makes interesting choices. And I'm not saying like, oh, we need to get somebody who could trick everybody into thinking this movie's going to be good. But I guess, I mean, he is an actor who I think has a lot of range, doesn't always do the exact same thing. I guess he does seem to play a certain type of character a lot, and I'm not sure exactly what that is, although I have seen most of these things that he's in. I guess his Triangle of Sadness character, who's sort of a shitty influencer, and his Murder at the End of the World character, who is more of an activist, but also, I guess, reads young. I'd say that's what he's good for. He's clearly older, right? 27. I don't think he feels like a 21-year-old necessarily, but he does feel like someone from a younger generation than some of these other guys. He feels like an actor who plays a Gen Z role really well. If we want Gen Z Cyclops, then that's what we get. I do think he is a character that can be rebellious and have a point of view, like in Murder at the End of the World. I would imagine the thing that this performance would be closest to would be King's Man, because that was just a pretty traditional action movie. I'll say this, Harris is not the only actor I would ever think of for Cyclops or anything like that. There's plenty of other actors that could do it. But I do think he's a good choice and an interesting choice. I'm not sure if he has Cyclops energy, but I guess it depends on what Cyclops is supposed to be. Is he supposed to be the older brother? Is he supposed to be the dad of the team? Is he supposed to feel like a teacher? Or is he supposed to feel like a friend? I guess most of that will be framed by the other two characters we're going to talk about. But overall first impressions, I like Harris Dickinson. I'm not convinced he's like the absolute best for the role, but he's a good pick. Then we've got Sadie Sink as Jean Grey. Now, most people know Sadie Sink. I mean, not even most people. I'd say like probably 90% of the people that know Sadie Sink know her from her role in Stranger Things, where she plays Max. Besides that, she was in The Whale, which I haven't seen because I don't want to. And she was in those Fear Street movies that I think are pretty good. This is an interesting one because, like, first of all, this is supposed to be the romantic interest of Scott Summers. So Harris Dickinson right now is 28, and Sadie Sink right now is 22. I don't think there's any problem with that. I think that's fine. I do think he does look a little bit different than her. It's definitely a product of he plays like young adults and she plays largely children, right? Kids that go to summer camp and stuff like that. Like, he does not seem like, I don't think he's an actor who would play that kind of character this year. Like, I don't know, they feel like they're kind of almost from different generations, but I'm sure that's a product of her being in Stranger Things. And I think in Stranger Things, she's great, and I enjoyed her enough in Fear Street. My thing with her is a lot of people, when people are saying, oh, who's going to play Jean Grey? If you were looking for an actor in this age range, again, someone in their early 20s, she always comes up because she's a good actor and she's a redhead. I'm not as sold on her, and I'm definitely not completely sold on her and Harris together. That being said, she's also a good actor, and I think she could maybe work with a slightly younger Scott. I'm not saying this like this people of different ages shouldn't date. I'm just saying, like, she feels like a kid, he feels like an adult, but I could be convinced. I think part of the other problem with a Jean Grey is like seeing the Sophie Turner Jean Grey play out over 2 movies. I don't think there's anything wrong with that casting either, but I just think she's not really Jean Grey. Like, Sophie Turner was playing Jean Grey and she was doing her best, but like, I never fully felt like she was Jean Grey. But I don't know like what that would be. And I think casting Jean Grey is tough. Like, Famke Janssen was good, but I'm not saying I'm not convinced Sadie Sink can do it. I think Sadie Sink would run into the same problem that Sophie Turner ran into, where she is so well known for playing another role on television that if you put her here, it would be hard for her to completely be Jean Grey or feel like Jean Grey without feeling like Max from Stranger Things again. Does Harris Dickinson have that problem? I wouldn't say he does, because I don't think any of his roles are as iconic. And they're not roles on a television show where he's played them so much that people are so familiar with him as that character. That being said, I think Marvel could do far worse in terms of casting a Jean Grey. I just don't have incredibly strong feelings about Sadie Sink for this role. And I don't love her as the Jean to his Cyclops. Like, does that mean he stays and she goes, or she stays and he goes? Neither necessarily. I'm just not sold on it. And I didn't even need to really give like a rundown on Jean Grey, because everybody knows Jean Grey. She's the first, I want to say, girl in the X-Men, because she joins when she's like in that first class, like when they're very young. Although I'm not even sure. It feels like they're supposed to be in their teens, but I can't even guarantee that. I don't know. But like, she is right up there with Storm as far as like the most consistent woman on the X-Men. She's somewhat inconsistent because she dies a bunch and then comes back, and obviously she has the big Phoenix storyline, which is one of those kind of like evil self takes over storylines. And I think that like is a really fun storyline, and that's why I would want somebody who can be a real jerk. And I'm not saying that I don't think she could do that. I'm just saying that's something that would be fun with a Jean Grey actor. On the other side of things, I would be fine with not doing Dark Phoenix for a very long time, since we did it already twice in these movies recently. But like, Jean Grey is not a character that surprises me here. Last one of these is, so her name is Julia Butters. I'm not incredibly familiar with her. All right, so Julia Butters, she is going to be in Freakier Friday, which is a movie that is not out yet. She was in The Fabelmans. She was in The Gray Man. But the thing that I know her most from, which is so funny because I didn't even recognize this on her IMDb page until just now, is she was in I Think You Should Leave. I believe she's the main girl in the Tammy Craps commercial, which, good for her. Like, that's cool. Now, 2 things about Julia Butters. 1, she's 15. 2, she's Jewish. Those are two things I'd love for Kitty Pryde in a movie where Cyclops is 27 and Jean is 23, which again, like those actors aren't guaranteed, but let's say that's what they're going for. A Scott and a Jean in their 20s. I love the idea of introducing a Kitty Pryde who is Shadowcat, played by Elliot Page in those original X-Men movies. I don't think she showed up in any of the other ones. She is a character who can walk through walls, and like it seems like she would be super important, but she is a character who's the focal point for a lot of great X-Men stories, and she is one of the characters who, like Magic, another character is one of my favorites, has grown up on the X-Men, and she's ascended to like a position of leadership on the team. She got a big boost from X-Men Evolution, being a main player on that. They were going to make a Pride of the X-Men cartoon that she would have been in, but that got canceled. And she wasn't the Wolverine in the X-Men cartoon, actually, to be fair. But like Kitty Pryde is a perfect POV character for a new X-Men team. A child who they just kind of find, who has mutant powers, who they have to protect, and they have to explain like, hi, here's what a mutant is, you're a mutant, here's who Beast is, here's who Cyclops is, this is what the X-Men are, that's what Magneto is. Like, you need to have a character like that you explain everything to. First movie, this was Anna Paquin's Rogue, she played that role, and then in the other ones, it was, I guess, like, I don't know, Mystique or all the kids. But I think this is a very smart choice, is to get someone that is quite young who can grow into this role. And also Kitty Pryde, famously Jewish character, that is a very important aspect of that character's history, always has been. So I do think, and I've heard people say this, if the option is available, like a Jewish actor playing that character would be great. So the fact that Julia Butters apparently is Jewish, awesome. As far as like judging her acting, I don't know, she was good in the Tammy Craps commercial. She's 15, so she's probably a pretty good child actor, like on her way to being like a great adult actor. And I remember she's pretty good in Gray Man, but I love the idea that we are going with a young Kitty Pryde, because that will set up like different levels of X-Men. This senior class, and not like senior class like 18 and then, but like senior class in terms of like X-Men that have already graduated, that are part of the program now, they're in the paramilitary organization. And then below that, you have like kids who are going through high school age, figuring out their mutant powers, figuring out puberty, and you could like change where some of the X-Men go, right? Nightcrawler could be in that group. Magic could be in that group. Beast could be in that same group with Scott and Jean, or he could be even older than them. Storm, you'd probably also want to be maybe a little bit older than them, or in that age range. It's tough. But these are the conversations that are fun about the X-Men, is the interactions with the team. Like, sure, some of it's kind of set in stone, and yeah, some characters are other characters' kids, so like they have to be a certain age. But beyond that, like, there is a lot of fun stuff you can do if you want to change up the lineups a little bit. And finding out that A, they're casting a Scott, a Jean, and a Kitty, but B, that they're casting a Kitty who is much younger, I'd say says something about the direction this movie is going in that I am really into. So overall, these first three actors, Harris Dickinson for Cyclops, Sadie Sink for Jean Grey, and Julia Butters for Kitty Pryde, aka Shadowcat, whatever you want to call her, I think those are all promising. None of them are like perfect necessarily, but they all have qualities that I think are good. Well, I don't know about Julia Butters, because she's a child, hard to judge that, but definitely the two adults, they are proven solid actors. And I think that's important, because this is going to be a humongous franchise. The X-Men should be as popular as the Avengers if these movies work. And even when these movies don't work, the X-Men are still incredibly popular and iconic and fun. And especially characters like Kitty. These are characters that comic book fans and just people who are aware of how fun Kitty Pryde can be have been waiting to see on screen. And yes, Elliot Page was in that original one, but barely as more than just Iceman's love interest. Like, I'm talking about a movie that centers the X-Men around Kitty Pryde. That could be so cool. That could be so fun. So first of all, I'm just thrilled that we're doing this, that we are doing X-Men casting rumors. I love it. I'm so excited. Overall, this is very promising. Remember when we did this last time with Fantastic Four? I'm pretty sure we were going with like, I don't know, Adam Driver for a while, Margot Robbie, like those did not all pan out. None of them panned out. Daveed Diggs was going to be the thing for a couple of weeks, and then he wasn't. So this could all change, and it probably will. But I am happy that we are about to start this journey, because it's going to end with an X-Men movie. And I love X-Men movies, and everyone will if this next one is as good as it can be. Speaking of things that are as good as they can be, I want to talk to you about this video sponsor, Nebula. If you've never heard of it before, Nebula is a subscription streaming service that me and a bunch of other YouTubers, a lot of people you're probably already watching, created because we wanted to have more control over our videos. We didn't want to have to cater to the algorithm, and we wanted to offer a better experience to you guys so you can watch all of my videos, they're all early. Some of them are like a full month early, some of them are like a day early, but every video goes up first on Nebula, and that is Nando V Movies, and that is the Nando Cut, both of my channels, and they're completely ad-free. So there's no ads in the middle, and there's no sponsor read at the end. And in 2025, we have so much cool stuff that we are working on. One thing that I am very excited about is a show called Abolish Everything. This is a live show that happens in the city where people come in and bring something that they hate, and they give a short presentation on why it should be abolished. Then a panel of experts goes in and questions them. And I'm excited for Abolish Everything because, like Nebula, we have a reputation for being very smart. We have a lot of very, very educated people who do research and make documentaries, but we also have a lot of really funny people, and I am excited to see that side of Nebula growing. And I always say, a year of Nebula is a steal at $5 a month or $60 a year. But if you go to go.nebula.tv/thenandocut, you can get a year of Nebula for $3 a month. It is an incredible deal. Go check it out. You're going to love it. But that is all I got. Stay safe. I'll see you next time.